Big heat is going, and if big heat is going, then what's coming? That's a good question, and we'll explore the answer together in just a minute. Severe weather is also going, but where? We're going to look at that too, and something else is coming. In fact, it may already be here. We're going to get into all of that in just a minute. One more thing that's going, and I'm glad to see it go. I took this picture the other day. Are the symbols of COVID through the passage of time. I'm so glad every time I see one of these social distancing symbols or stickers fade away as time wears on. COVID was such a disastrous period in our recent history, and I'm glad to see it in the rearview mirror. Still so many wide-ranging negative impacts from that era, and I hope we don't have to go through anything like that ever again. I'm sure we will at some point, as history is replete with such things, but hopefully today at least we will be good for a while. In any event, this is something that's coming. This is Hurricane Iona, and we're going to get into Hurricane Iona as well as the rest of the tropics. We're going to start the show with our tropical update. Welcome into the channel, my friends. Jason Pritchard, your host for Cold Rain's Weather World, and we've got a big show today. We had a lot of destructive winds and severe weather yesterday. Got a little bit more to go today. We're going to look at that here in just a minute. We've got a heat wave that's packing its bags as we speak. It's about to be out of here. And a couple of interesting things going on in space that we're going to get into here at the end of the show. And I'm going to test your weather IQ. We're going to start by taking a look at the tropics with a few things of interest going on out here. If you haven't yet subscribed, please hit the subscribe button down below. We've had a lot of growth over the past week. Thank you for that. Leave a comment and give us a like. If there's anything I can be in prayer for you about, please let me know in the comments section. Here is the satellite image out in the Atlantic. But before we spend too much time on that, check this out. This is Hurricane Iona, which is looking like about a Category 4 storm now. I think the last update had this at a 3, but it is going up and getting stronger and stronger and stronger. This is the Pacific, and here is Iona exiting stage left as we go on out in time. Kelly is hot on its tracks, another disturbance hot on its heels, and a couple of more. Boy, the Pacific has been active. These waves are just coming through the Atlantic, getting out into the Pacific. Favorable conditions out here. The Atlantic, not so much. Nothing going on out here, and nothing expected to go on over the next 7 days. We were watching some activity, and you can see that activity out here in the Atlantic. This is the infrared loop, and it's showing you where the coldest cloud tops are. As convection rises into the atmosphere, those tops of those clouds are very, very cold. Cold temperatures up there. The satellite algorithm produces reds and blacks and whites. That's how come some of these are darker than others. And it shows you where the areas of most robust convection are. You can see one such area here. That's the wave we're watching. Here's another little wave that's meandering around. Here's some more convection over the Gulf Stream or up thereabouts. And then some convection down here moving into Central America as that wave train just continues, and a little bit of convection here in the Gulf. These are the areas that I'm going to watch right here in the Gulf over the next couple of few days and see what the models continue to show there. But that's what's going on out here. We've got a problem, folks. Here's the problem. Here's one of the problems. We've got a couple of problems, actually. All of this orange and yellow is dry air. This is the water vapor image. And this has just been a big problem. Air coming off of Canada, dust and dry air has just been infiltrating the main development region. And anytime you get these little bursts of convection, they come out here and absorb dry air. You also have a sinking background. Tropical systems do not like dry air. They do not like sinking air, and they do not like wind shear. And we've got all of the above. Wind shear may be abating, and we may be getting into a favorable environment out in time. But in the meantime, we have dry air in spades. Remember this map from the other day? We had this is our European ensemble probability map. It shows you where the most likely areas of tropical development are. And we had a big area of orange here, and it was moving off in this direction up toward the United States. Now it's just a little blob of yellow, so there is still a chance that something develops out here, but it's not looking like anything's going to develop in none of the operational models, at least none of the good ones. You see a lot of people posting these AI models, giving them the thumbs up. Well, they're showing hurricanes all over the place, just like they show major winter storms all over the place in the winter. They haven't quite learned enough yet to be all that reliable, but they're getting better. Anyway, the main models are not showing a lot of development out here, but we are seeing an increased signal for something going on off the East Coast. And you can see that here. Look at this. These are probabilities of tropical cyclone development. And why is that the case? Well, I'll show you why that is the case. First, we'll take a look at the European out here in the Atlantic. And let's see if it develops anything out of this. This is the operational European. You see a little low spinning up here. You see that? I'll circle it and get your eyes fixated on it. That little low right there, it's showing, hey, maybe this convection that's out here in the Atlantic will fire up something. The GFS is kind of similar to this, and I'm not going to take you through all of that, but just look at this. Gets a little bit organized, and then it sort of dissipates everything. We get a little more convection down the road, but really nothing comes out of this. You see waves continuing to move off. The wave train will continue off the coast of Africa, as we would expect as we get on into the main tropical time period, the main season for tropical activity as we approach September. And you start to see down the road some hints that things get a little bit more favorable, and we start to see some cyclone development out here. And we do see wind shear decreasing over time, and we've got plenty of warm water, especially over here in the Western Atlantic. So we're going to watch these systems as they come off, but nothing imminent. Here's what's going on with the European model as it relates to the United States. And as we take a look at the next couple of days, you can see areas of convection up here in the middle of the states and over the southeast. Get a few showers in the lee of the Rockies up here as well. But what's going to happen? It's going to have this big cold front kind of come through. And look at this. You can see this as we get on in here to Thursday. Really, we're starting to see the activity centered over here in the east and then toward the southeast and mid-Atlantic over time. And that cold front that's going to help us relieve the heat, big high pressure building in, by the way, we're going to see that hang up over the southeast. And when those cold fronts hang off the southeast coast, you can even see a little low pressure. I think this is an actual indication of an extratropical low and not a tropical system. But you'll see this cold front kind of hang up like this off the southeast coast, right in here and into the Gulf. And what will happen is oftentimes we will get development along those boundaries. The European model itself is showing just activity and plenty of rain along that front. But right so far, we're out here at August the 5th. Next Tuesday, and we're not seeing anything until we get out here and we finally start to see a little bit of a low pressure signal on Tuesday, August the 5th, and it moves harmlessly on out to sea. Why? Because there's general troughing over the United States. Now we're going to see unsettled conditions across the east, but as long as we've got a trough in place, that will block tropical storm systems from coming into the United States. And that's kind of the big synoptic picture of what's going on. So we'll watch the homegrown activity. That looks like the most imminent place that something may develop, and that will happen if it does in the next 10 days or so. And we're going to keep watching that. That front will eventually dissipate. Things will move along. That's your tropical update. We're going to take a look next at that heat wave because that's been a big story. We've had heat index values over 100, and that's going to continue, but not for too much longer. We're going to get into that right after your Weather IQ question coming right up. Continuing on with our tropical theme, today's Weather IQ question is about the tropics and tropical cyclones. One thing I wanted to tell you though, if you get a chance, please pray for my son, Cold Drizzle. You see him on this channel from time to time. I do short reels occasionally, and he's with me on those. We found out yesterday he's going to have a root canal. He's been complaining the last couple of days of a toothache, and he's autistic, and autistic people just sometimes don't understand things like that all that well, and he's grabbing at it, and it's just hurting him when he eats, and it's just painful to watch him go through that. But anyway, the fortunate thing is we've got a root canal scheduled for next Monday, so please keep him and us in your prayers as we go through that situation. And so that's unfortunate, but that's just how life goes, and we just get through it. We pray together and we walk together and encourage each other, and certainly I appreciate that, and anything that you can offer for me in that regard, I'm happy to accept it. So with that, today's question is, what is the primary energy source for tropical cyclones? Cold air aloft, warm ocean water, jet stream winds, and solar radiation. And I kind of gave you a little hint earlier if you were paying attention, so you probably know the answer to this. But if you don't know it, hang on till the end of the show, and you will know it very, very soon. If you do know it, type it in the comments section. And now let's check on that heat wave. This heat wave has been the gift that keeps on giving. Well, we're going to wrap it up and return to sender shortly. But until then, we've got heat advisories and extreme heat warnings up for much of the south central quadrant of the country, all up and down the east coast up into lower New England with heat advisories. But these extreme heat warnings, we could see heat index values approaching 115 up and down the Mississippi Valley, parts of Georgia and Florida as well. But anywhere in the orange, you could see heat index values over 100 degrees. More air quality alerts for more smoke up in Minnesota yet again, northern parts of Minnesota. Flood watches up in New Mexico. We've seen the monsoon will flow out of the south. It will continue. Red flag warnings here in Utah and Oregon. We could see thunderstorms later produce gusts into the 50s and lightning strikes. It's been very dry, don't burn anything. And then flood watches up here in the mountains of Montana as well. That's what's going on. There's your air quality. Bad air again up here in northern Minnesota. Here in Philadelphia, not too good. Dallas and Houston not looking all that great. And of course, Los Angeles typically is not the best either. There's the smoke coming right out of these wildfires. They're still burning. We're going to see a ridge poke up there and drive that smoke into the United States. That is what is going on over the next several days. So we'll probably see much more in the way of smoke issues near the ground as we go on out in the next several days or so. Current drought situation, terrible here in the west, not quite as bad in the east. A few spots in the Midwest down here in southern Florida where we're looking at drought. Some of these areas down here in the south, though, have missed on some of these hit or miss thunderstorms. Lots of places have hit. Some areas have missed, and we're seeing increased drought. Alaska and Hawaii looking droughtish a little bit. Not bad in Alaska, but more so in Hawaii too. Do we have any relief in sight? Well, in the east, yes. Up here in the Midwest, potentially, but out here in the west, no. We've got some flooding concerns. You can't really tell the colors here, so I'll tell you this. The purple is 1.5 inches or greater. When you start to get into the reds, you really start to get into the 3 and 4 inch plus range. But flooding concerns over the next 7 days are going to be confined to the southeast and up here in the mid-Mississippi, sort of the Missouri Valley here, where all of these different regions kind of intersect here in the Corn Belt. So that's what we're looking at in terms of precipitation over the next 7 days. So unfortunately, not a lot of relief out west where we need it. Here are your heat index. Let's get on the right display. There we go. Heat index values, apparent temperatures, whatever you want to call them, real feel over the next few days. This afternoon, we've got heat indexes up into the 100s, up and down the eastern seaboard, upper 90s at least, and then 105 up to 110 here in the central plains along the Mississippi River Valley. Not so bad everywhere else. Those heat index values continue, but get pushed a little bit farther south as each day as we go through the week. This is Wednesday, so we're still seeing those high heat index values, particularly here in the lower Mississippi Valley on Wednesday. On Thursday, this person's popping up. Get off my screen. And there we have a little farther to the south on Thursday, and look at this. Whoo, 70s, even 60s up here in the north. And then we get on into Friday. Look at Friday. Everything bad in terms of heat index values confined down here to the southern tier, some 80s and 90s around in the west as the ridge starts to build out here, but not too bad. Very nice indeed, actually, around the Great Lakes, northeast and points south. Now, this is a chart that I don't show all that much, but it gives you the percent of precipitable water, so moisture content in the atmosphere above normal. Greens are above normal, blues are very much above normal. So if you think that the content of moisture in the atmosphere has been above normal, the answer is yes, it has, particularly in the Corn Belt. Look at this, blues, that's getting around 200% of normal. All right, so these are up, and this is current. Now watch what happens as we go on out in time. This is a good illustration. You got plenty more moisture coming in here through the northern plains as we get into the overnight hours tonight with another convective system moving through. But look what happens tomorrow afternoon. Look up here in the plains, the northern plains, the Midwest, Great Lakes. Starting to see those browns come in. Look, browns into Thursday, browns coming in Friday, moisture getting shunted into the mid-Atlantic and southeast. Got plenty more moisture as the little trough moves in up here in the northwest, but drying out everywhere up above the Mason, along the Mason-Dixon line, Dixie Alley down here. You're going to stay a little bit moister than normal, but we're going to see that dry air really punch in fairly far south. It's going to feel good with temperatures cooling down into the 70s for some, 80s for others, but what a break it's going to be. This is your upper airflow. Look at this. Ridge poking into Canada, courtesy of this big cutoff low that's out here in the Gulf of Alaska. We see this sometime in the wintertime, and that will help bring in mild Pacific air and flood the continent with that. If this moves back west, we'll get into this at wintertime. It'll help pump this ridge along the west coast, give us cool in the east. But anyway, here's the flow, fast flow, long, and really the Canadian border north of the Great Lakes as this ridge takes hold, and then you got flow coming into the south as well. But this is what's going on as we get on out over time. That ridge starts to build out into the west. Had a big anticyclone here over the eastern portion of the country. That gets squashed and pushed south. This cold front and this trough comes in, bringing a lot of smoke out of Canada. Unfortunately, you can see the winds kind of blowing along these streamlines out of the northwest. That ridge sets up into Canada. It sits there for a little bit. We get a flat sort of response out here in the Four Corners region, which will eventually sort of oscillate back and forth in terms of its strength. And this ridge that you see poking way up into Canada, as long as that's there, that's going to send cold fronts down here into the northern part of the United States. Sometimes they'll make it down here into the lower 48, depending on what happens out here in the Four Corners region. We're going to have a flat ridge setting up out here, and that's going to allow kind of a zonal flow across the lower 48. But initially, at least, we're going to get a nice push of that cooler air as we go on through the week. This is taking us all the way through next Monday. So this is going to be cool. Trough's going to set up in the east and keep us unsettled out here. And eventually, this ridge is going to migrate over into central Canada and alleviate the smoke problem, at least, and probably put an end to cold fronts for a while. So we'll warm back up. Here's your 2-meter temperature anomalies. This is where the temperature is above or below normal. You can guess that orange is above and reds are above and blues and greens are below to much below. And as we go on through the week, this is Thursday, get on into Thursday afternoon, look at that. Thursday afternoon into Friday overnight, we're seeing big green anomalies. Those are 10 to 15 degrees below normal. We get on it here into Friday. Look, we're starting to push this all the way into the south and southeast. The Central Plains are looking good. Great Lakes are looking good. We get on into Saturday, 15 degrees potentially below normal. Maybe it won't get quite that much below, but say 5 to 10 degrees is still going to be nice compared to how it's been. Get on out into Sunday, and those blues just continue over the central and eastern portions of the country into the southeast as well. Everybody gets in on it by the time we get into Sunday. So it's going to be a spectacular weekend where the rain holds off, particularly in the southeast. We're going to see temperatures in the 70s stretching into parts of the upper southeast and 80s for a lot of other people. It's going to feel very, very nice, 70s and 80s up here in the northern part of the country as well. Now we're going to take a look at the severe weather threat because we've got a little bit more severe weather to go this afternoon and potentially tomorrow as well. I've got an interesting chart to show you here in a second, but look at this. This is the severe weather report map for yesterday. We had 252 reports, many reports of wind damage here in Iowa with that big line that moved through. We're going to see another one of those move through today, though farther south and not quite as intense, it doesn't look like. But a lot of wind reports up here in Minnesota. We had 80 to 90 to even close to 100 mile per hour wind gusts in some of these areas in South Dakota and Iowa. Big hail, 2 to 3 inch reports as well. If you think we've had a lot of severe weather, you're right, folks. Look at this. This is all the severe weather that we've seen so far for the year: tornadoes, wind, and hail. Here is the actual breakdown. Tornadoes running third place. Of course, our benchmark is 2011. We've had tons and tons of tornadoes then. We've had a lot this year, too. Hail, we're running about middle of the pack, maybe slightly below. And wind, we're second only to 2011, too. So we've seen wind reports every single day. This severe weather season has been unrelenting. And it's going to be unrelenting today here in parts of Montana, all the way back down through northeastern Wyoming, southwestern South Dakota, most of Nebraska, with a line later moving into Iowa later. Tornadoes, not much of a threat today, but wind, we could see significant wind over 70 miles per hour here in central Nebraska. And then hail could be a threat back here in the west where lapse rates are a little bit better, but we're going to see strong instability again. And that's what's going on, folks. We look at tomorrow as well. We can look at tomorrow. Let's just do that right on the fly real quick. There's tomorrow. That cold front starts to push in a little bit. We're going to see a boundary set up here, and we're going to see potential isolated thunderstorms tomorrow out in the east through the Ohio Valley, and then back here in the west and the Central Plains, or high plain, western high plains as well. There we go. There's your forecast radar. And this morning, everything's kind of dying down. But look what happens a little bit later today. We start to see scattered thunderstorms fire up here in the southeast as that ridge is starting to retrograde. We get a little bit of a piece of energy in through the lakes, but everything's kind of firing off here in the lee of the Rockies, and we start to see supercells break out, potentially producing some large hail, and then things will coalesce as we get on in toward 7 and 8 o'clock. Look at this. We start to see really good convection signals here in Wyoming, up into South Dakota. Big area of thunderstorms moving through South Dakota, south of Rapid City, and getting into Nebraska, central Nebraska. Things are building up as we get on into the evening hours. And look, there's that line. It kind of coalesces, comes together, and really helps to organize that wind threat. And it progresses on through the late night hours through Iowa and holds together into tomorrow morning, potentially making its way into places like Chicago and down here south of Madison, and just into Springfield and places like that. Eventually it'll dissipate before firing back up again, a little bit lesser and a little bit of a lesser capacity over the course of tomorrow afternoon. More showers and thunderstorms anywhere from the northern New England areas, where it could be more isolated in nature, to scattered back down here along the southeast, and of course the front range of the Rockies. Back here atop that ridge, where we just see little pieces of energy moving along in the flow, interacting with that moist and unstable air mass, that will fire up tomorrow afternoon, and things will dissipate as we go on into the evening hours tomorrow night. That's your severe weather threat. We're going to end the show with a couple of little interesting things going on upstairs here as we take a look at our space weather and geological update. Well, the moon will not be lighting up the sky for the next few days, but something else might be, and that would be the Southern Delta Aquariids and the Alpha Capricorniids, all within the Perseid meteor showers. So those two, the former two, peak tonight and tomorrow. So if you can, get outside if it's not cloudy, particularly in the pre-dawn hours, and check these meteor showers out. Look at this. You can actually play around with this. You can see the meteor shower itself is just a area of dust. It intersects the Earth. You can see the Earth kind of rotating around. There we go. Everything's kind of rotating around. We can spin it out, spin it in, see what's going on, but everything's kind of rotating around. Check that out. That's kind of neat, folks. But those are going to be going on and peaking in the next couple of days. Sunspot activity is not peaking. We've got some sunspots turning away from us now. These are not complex. We've got a new group coming in, and unless it gets bigger and more complex, it's not going to do anything either. So that's what's going on upstairs. Downstairs, nothing going on in the Pacific Ring of Fire. No new volcanoes out there, and earthquakes. All is quiet on the earthquake front. We had a big shake south of New Zealand out in the ocean. Nothing going on with that. And we had another pretty big shake in Indonesia, but nothing around here. There's your moon, as I said, 23.3%, waxing crescent. Not a lot of light pollution. Great time to get out and look at those Aquariids and Capricorniids. Full moon coming up August the 9th will be a sturgeon moon, day and night map. Look at that. There we are. Everybody in the broad daylight hours, and we have 55 days until calendar fall. Let's go, folks. I'm ready. All right. That brings us into the answer to today's Weather IQ question. The question was, what is the primary energy source for tropical cyclones? And out of all four possible answers, the only correct answer here is warm ocean water. They love warm ocean water. The warmer the water, the more they love it, and the stronger they can potentially get. And that's when you start to see rapid cyclogenesis or tropical development. You'll see rapid intensification when you start to get these water temperatures in the 90s. And we have some of those in the Gulf. So we'll see if something ever makes it in there to make use of that. And that is the weather show for today. One more thing you need to know. Back in 1958, on this day, NASA was officially established when President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the National Aeronautics and Space Act into law. There you go, folks. And that's what happened today in history. And now you know the weather. Now you know a little bit about history. Hope everything's going well for you and your week's going well so far. If there's anything I can pray over about, let me know what it is and I'll be happy to do that. Thanks for watching, and tune back in tomorrow. We'll have another update. In the meantime, this Cold Rain reminding you, other stations run 24/7, but we got you covered right here, right now, 4814. Take care, everybody. Have a good day.